But I have to say, we always come up with the question of silos, and I have a completely different view about silos, which is that I think silos will persist for decades into the future, because if I'm in a, especially if you think about it as a product business, and quite a few of our clients are product businesses, they would love to take advantage of this technology. They're quite happy for it to interoperate at certain points on their terms. But actually the whole business model for them is about servitization or consumables driven proposition, and they quite frankly want a silo. And so there'll be this mix of reusable technologies, these horizontal components, and I think it's a really interesting opportunity to help reduce the barriers for this. But the barriers are already quite low, in my opinion. I think the interoperability work, what's really been transformative has been the realisation that actually it's quite easy to interoperate at the space of the cloud and the internet.
So this is a thing where actually the TSB has followed a very sensible process of spending several years to really understand, running several workshops and small projects to try and understand what the problem is, and then try and set about solving it. And they concluded that the problem was the internet of silos, really. We have vertically integrated platforms and nothing talks to anything else, and until we solve that problem, the internet of things is not going to happen. So they ran a big project, it's still running now actually, it finishes at the end of March. 1 year, £6.5 million, it's quite a lot of money to spend in a year. And they involved about 40 or 50 companies, including lots of big players like IBM, Intel, ARM, BT, and so on. And including 1248 and AlertMe, as it happens. We're in ARM's cluster, there are 8 clusters. And the goal was to demonstrate interoperability between all of these existing vertical platforms, many of which already had millions of devices and customers and so on. So it wasn't a big sort of spend lots of money on research thing, it was like spend money on actually demonstrating interoperability. And I think it's been quite successful actually so far. And the big question has been what will happen in phase 2, because it now needs to migrate into more sort of commercially focused stuff. And they added a lot more money at the last minute to phase 1 because they had so many competitors bidding for the project. There was a short list of 24 clusters. So the big question is phase 2, will they boost phase 2 to be proportionate with phase 1 and allow it to sort of go into its power curve. We've developed some interesting specification for interoperability, and it could do with a bit more of a boost now, I think. So watch this space. It's a bit of a cliche buzzword, but I think a useful word for that sort of thing is ecosystem. People tend to think of it in technical terms, but I think it's also true in commercial terms and so on. And I think there's an interesting parallel with sort of evolution in that you can end up, if you separate things like the Galapagos Islands, you can end up with very interesting different things. In Russia, for example, in the 80s and 90s, lots of very cunning and clever different things were done. But you eventually end up at a dead end because you can't multiply by all the other things that are going on.
Exactly.
Whereas you need lots. If a silos are too narrow, it's extremely inefficient because everyone's reinventing the wheel and not able to take advantage of all the other things that other people are doing.
I think that what is very clear, and I think it's challenged into a lot of organisations, is basically what the ecosystem looks like around making kind of bringing all this to life. And actually, what's interesting from a commercial point of view, it does challenge who you think you're collaborating with, who you're partnering with, how you're working with somebody, and it is actually forcing some change to thinking about business model and how you do it. So I think there are opportunities to build, but it's not in the sense of that total stack in terms of we own everything in this. It's something that we bring to the party, which is reflective of our skill set, and therefore that brings the whole thing to life. And actually recognising that ecosystem is actually quite an important aspect of understanding certain things.